Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Lawyer Interviews. I'm your host, Jeff Dillon, and with us today we have lawyer, comedian, father, director, man of the arts in the legal world, Badar Tareen. We're very lucky to have someone who can tell us about public interest law, can tell us about his journey into comedy, life in DC, anything like that. Badar, why don't you give us a little quick elevator pitch? Introduce yourself. What did I miss? Did I get it all?
I think you did a pretty good job. Born and raised in a small town in North Dakota, 1,500 people to a Pakistani Muslim immigrant family. Grew up there, and yeah, I'm a civil rights lawyer by day for the Department of Justice, and I do stand-up comedy and filmmaking at night. Married with a 2-year-old, and I live in Washington, D.C.
Amazing. It's a complete life, I'd say. You've reached true happiness, it seems.
Yeah, but I'm 40, so it's a bit of a trade-off.
Oh, you're 40.
Yeah, I just
Okay,
turned 40.
well, maybe
Yeah.
we'll stop the interview because that's gross, actually.
It's disgusting. You know what's
Yeah.
really disgusting is this is true. I did a stand-up comedy show the other day, and I went up, and then after me was a 20-year-old Indian kid who did a set, and he goes, "I didn't know my dad does stand-up comedy," and it took me a second to think about. Yes, I could have been his father, very likely. In fact, given my dating history, and so I said I didn't know my son was a disappointment. Which
Oh, nice. Okay.
hit a
No,
little
well,
too
he got a
hard.
good dig on you, and then yours is pretty good too. Did that get a good laugh?
Yeah, I think so. It was a kind of a shout while he said that. But yeah, I mean, that's the point of me bringing that up is like, wow, 40. Like I never. It's funny that you're not constantly aware of what your age is until other people remind you. But that was the first time I became more self-aware. Like, okay, I'm not one of the young kids anymore.
Duh, yeah. Well, I mean, there's always older people
Yeah.
until there isn't, I guess. When did you always know you were going to be a lawyer? How did you get from North Dakota small town kid to lawyer in DC? Let's start with the lawyer life.
Sure. Well, I mean, like a lot of people, we read To Kill a Mockingbird and watched A Few Good Men, which was the big child movie of my generation. But then in college, I started thinking about it more seriously. And I was kind of on this weird crossroad in college between law or filmmaking, which is bizarre. But it really came down to the idea that what I found interesting about law is you get to sort of be dramatic, but in an academic setting. And what I liked about that was specifically working for the government is that you're not just representing one particular person or company, but ideally you're representing everybody. So with that dramatic academic setting, plus kind of representing everybody on issues I care about, seemed to be a good fit for me. So that's kind of how I got to that.
Were you doing like drama and things like that too?
Yeah, I did a lot of acting and plays when I was in junior high, high school, the theater camp and stuff, but I wasn't really one of the theater kids necessarily, but I did enjoy being on stage and making people laugh. And it wasn't until later on I found that stand-up comedy was a better fit for me than acting.
It's a better fit for you than law.
Oh, not a better fit for me than law. Thinking about the law is, to me, aside from the stability and lifestyle, it's just being a comedian is such a nocturnal young person sport.
Yeah.
Like I did a mic the other day where you have to show up at 5 o'clock in order to get the spot for a 9 p.m.
Yeah.
And I
Oh,
have a kid, I have a job. It was my day off because it was, murderer day yesterday, Columbus or whatever. And so I had the day off, and I had someone look after my son. I get there at 5 o'clock, and I go there for like 4 hours, wait to get my spot. I had the worst bomb of my life, probably the last 5 to 10 years I've ever had in my career. And then I come home and I'm like, I can't do this full term. And then you have to travel when you're on the road. So even if I
yeah,
got to
yeah,
a
yeah.
big level of Hassan Minhaji, which is a big if, but even if I got to that level, I don't know if I really want to travel on the road and have that kind of night lifestyle. I think the law's kind of got that steady, consistent lifestyle, but also you get to use your brain in a way that I like to. That would feel kind of weird if I did it after all this
Well,
time and training.
I mean, we wouldn't want to devoid the world of this brain power of yours too. It's that
This
would
brain
be
trust.
It would be a tragedy. So now people don't know this about you, but your family were, and I heard this because I stalk you. No, but also I know from you that your parents are doctors, right? Or your dad's a doctor.
Yeah, my dad's a retired doctor. My brother's a doctor. My sister's a lawyer. Another one's a journalist.
And they're
They're all
from Pakistan. And that's how you ended up in rural North Dakota because they found a job out there. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. There was a huge demand. I think there still is for immigrants to come to underserved communities. So it's a kind of a win-win situation because the immigrant person gets, at that time, a quicker pathway to citizenship, and the town gets a doctor that it might not have gotten otherwise. So, my dad loved it. In fact, it's a funny story. My mom and dad only planned on coming to North months or something. They're like, let's just get our foot in the door in America. And then they just fell in love with the town and fell in love with the people, and they ended up staying there for 31 years.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it is easing in, I guess you could say, or it's the most intimidating place to be. I don't know. I don't even know if I'm welcomed in North Dakota. Do you,
I think you get by.
maybe, yeah, probably. And did you go to college and law school out west in those areas? Where your journey go from there?
Well, first of all, it's Midwest, so watch your mouth.
Oh,
And two, I went to college in Moorhead, Minnesota, which is on the border of North Dakota, Minnesota, so pretty close. And then after college, I worked on Capitol Hill for a couple of years, and then I went to law school in North Carolina, Chapel Hill, UNC Chapel
oh, Tar Heels. All right,
Hill. Yep.
cool. Um, and you do civil rights law.
Yeah.
Is that the how you started right out of law school? You got right into the public interest?
Sort of. I was what's called a presidential management fellow. So it's this fellowship program after grad school. And then through that, I did a rotation at the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. I got really lucky. I think I was one of their first presidential management fellows. And then I worked really hard. I got, some awards or whatever in some cases. And so that helped me get another job at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Office for Civil Rights. I did that for 7-8 years, and then I came back to Department of Justice. So getting Department of Justice, for those of you who don't know, is extraordinarily difficult, at least for the Civil Rights Division. And the main way people get in oftentimes is through the honors program, which is right through law school. So they have to go through to get that, usually you go through Ivy League school or, God help us, Georgetown, one of those people. But you get to go to school like that, and maybe you'll get into it. I did not go to those schools, and my grades were fine, but I wasn't at that level as Harvard.
I mean, UNC is not a bad school.
Oh, it's a fine school. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely better than Georgetown, but that's where Jeff went, for everyone who's curious. But it it was fine, but I didn't get in through that way, so I had to kind of hustle my way in, because they make those job openings at DOJ once every 6 or 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And when I did apply, I used every connection I had, every bit of goodwill I had, everything I could put on my resume to make that happen. And I got lucky.
You skipped right over. You won all these awards. What did you get?
At Department of Justice, when I was a PMF. So I got a team award for a case that, I believe this was the North Carolina case. So there's a North Carolina court access problem where the whole state of North Carolina court system did not provide interpreters for those who are limited English proficient. So my first day at the job at DOJ I was on an airplane in North Carolina. So I did several interviews with a team of really awesome lawyers. We did this big case, a big letter of findings, and got them to change their whole court system to provide interpreters for those who don't speak English very well. So for example, if a woman is a victim of domestic abuse and she wants to get a protective order and she doesn't speak English, she might have to use her alleged abuser to interpret for her if there was no interpreter provided by the court. So it's stuff like that where it actually does make a big difference in the case and how it comes, especially for child custody cases. If you can't even communicate with the judge, you can lose your kids. So that was a big thing. And then I got, that was a team award I was on. And then I got a letter of commendation from Tom Perez, who was at the time the head of the whole Civil Rights Division, Department of Justice. So I got that. And then, at HHS got some awards too. And then when that opening at DOJ happened like a year ago, every award, every connection I had, I just threw in there and it happened. Because it normally doesn't happen for people like me who have been out of law school for over a decade,
Right. Okay. What did you have to I don't know. Did you have to start over in any way, or did you get to keep your seniority?
I didn't start over. So the nice thing about DOJ, and I'll be completely transparent about salary because I'm a federal employee. So we have a GS pay scale, the federal government. So I was at HHS, U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. I was HHS at GS 14, and this job at DOJ is a GS 15, which is the highest you can go on the GS pay scale. And the only thing higher than that is senior executive service, which is people super, super senior. So yeah, I actually was able to move up. But the interesting thing was at HHS, I was technically a civil rights analyst, even though I was a lawyer and a lot of my colleagues were. But DOJ, I'm now an attorney advisor. The culture shock was that people at HHS were brilliant and awesome, but DOJ is such a caliber of lawyers and analysis and work that it's made me work a lot harder.
Yeah, no, I mean, these are like, I'm guessing future politicians or former law firm people, like just very serious high end lawyers who are coming in and out of the government, where they're, are you intimidated? I mean, you're fairly smart guy, but
Yeah, not that smart, right? Yeah, I got you. No, everybody there was, yeah, so many of my colleagues went to those fancy, Ivy League schools, but also clerked for federal Supreme Court judges. And yeah, there is a little bit of a slight imposter syndrome. Like, oh my gosh, am I going to make it here? But at the same time, I've been lucky enough to have a lot of good work experience, HHS, DOJ before. I was a HUD, that's a Department of Housing, Urban Development. And I was, worked for judges and worked on Capitol Hill. So I was lucky to have all these different experiences in government where I was able to do, legislative, judicial, executive branch, local, state, federal government. And I felt I've been wanting this job for a while, that prepared me and put me at a spot that hopefully makes me valuable enough.
Yeah. Well, it is very exciting. And it seems like it's a really cool like trajectory for your career. But for some reason that's not enough for you. And you had to jump into the comedy world. Now for people watching, I met Butter. We were in New York City. I think you probably were at like maybe the first or second open mic I ever did. I think you were maybe even hosting it. But you were in New York City. So you were working for HHS in New York?
Yep, I did.
At that time. And then I don't know how long you had been doing comedy, but when did you get started there?
So in New York, yeah, I think I got started in New York City around the same time you moved. I think we both moved there in 2018, I want to say. And
sure.
Yeah, I think it was around that time because I just got married. And so my wife, of course, when I met her on her first date, I said, hey, just so you know, I live in DC. I'm not moving for anyone. This is a deal breaker. A year later, we get married. I'm moving to New York because she got a medical residency. So yeah, we're living in New York. And that's when I was doing stand-up comedy. And you might know this, but when you do comedy, but when you move to a new city, it's almost like starting all over again. No one knows who you are. In New York, you're in a sea of gifted and talented people. It's probably, I would say, probably the best city, arguably in the world for stand-up comedy. Name a better one. And so it was fun to start over again. And
so you had started doing comedy in DC before?
I did. Yeah,
oh,
I did. Yeah. And it was a different scene than it is now. I feel like it's much stronger now.
So how did you start in DC? Well, walk us through your first experience.
My personal life in that was I actually started. So I had kind of a marvelous Miss Maisel kind of moment where I was going through a divorce, and now I'm starting stand-up comedy because I had this time in my life where, when you're going through that, you are basically like, what is my identity? When you're getting divorced, you're like, your life and what you think you are is tied to this other person. Your future is this. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden it's gone. You're like, well, who am I? And then it's like, well, I've always wanted to do this comedy thing. And now that I'm starting over, let me do it. And I have something to talk about now. I tried an open mic once when I was 22 and I had some stage presence or whatever, but I had nothing to talk about. Now
Where did you do that? Where'd you do the 22-year-old one?
Oh, it was at a place called Parker's in Bethesda. Okay. And this was way back when I was an intern on Capitol Hill. I was like, maybe I was even 21, but I had nothing to say. I just had stage presence, but I couldn't really.
Allegedly. I mean, I wasn't there. I didn't see the stage presence.
I totally had it. Hey, North Dakota state champion, persuasive speaking. but if
Okay.
it's
All
but
right.
it's
You can't
champ right
argue with
here,
that.
but
That's
it's North Dakota.
North
So
Dakota State champ. Yeah. Okay. So you beat
Class
out
B.
you beat out a couple cows and maybe 6 other people, but all right, that's good. No
You
offense to
forgot the
North.
chickens. Yeah. They have
But
great speakers for the chickens.
so you're
No,
22.
so
When's the next one? When did you dive in again? How many years later was that?
I was 29, maybe 30, something like that. And I
Mm-hmm.
did this thing at the DC Improv called 5 Minutes to Funny. It's like this class you take. So I did that and it just kind of got me started. The thing is, like, there's a long time where I just did comedy off and on. You know, when you're a lawyer and you're whatever, like you're not, I can't speak for all lawyers, but for me anyway, like I did not have the capacity to go out as much as you're supposed to, 5 times, 7 times a week, whatever it is. I'd
Right.
go out once or twice, and maybe a month or two I wouldn't do comedy, and I'd come
Yep.
back. So it's kind of like when you go to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
If I told you I only go to the gym once, a couple times a week, and then I stop for 2 months, and then I go back, it's like you're starting over. And you're
Oh
trying
yeah.
to,
Yeah. No, I mean, we do our jobs every day. Comedy can be a full-time job without getting paid, but
yeah.
it takes that many repetitions and everything. But there clearly was something that made you want to try it, right? Was
Yeah,
there something missing? Were you not getting enough laughs at the water cooler at work, or like what were you trying to get out of?
I just have this urge to do it. You ever watch the show Dexter?
Yep.
So it's just the show, but for those who don't watch, it's about this guy who is otherwise normal, but he has this thirst to like kill people, right? So he only kills bad guys, whatever. So I don't have a thirst to kill anybody, but I do have this thirst to be on stage and to get laughs. Like it's if I don't do it after a few weeks, I start feeling weird. And I
Yeah.
start feeling I have to get it out of my system. So it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like coming up for water, and then I can go back under comfortably and sort of drown until I need to come back up again. That's how it is for me. It's this itch that I need to make people laugh, and my personal interactions are going to get-togethers doesn't quite do it because it's a different skill set, and it's not you're not being edgy when you're at a baby's 2-year-old birthday party.
And it's addicting. I mean, you get that
Yeah.
feeling and you want it again. I mean, totally understand. So, did you ever did it ever interfere with your job, would you say, or?
No, the only thing it did do is it made me think about because now we live in an age where to be successful in comedy, from what I understand, because let's be honest, I'm not super successful yet, is you need to have some kind of social media presence. You have to put your content out there so people know you're out there. It can't just be at the club. And I was always cognizant of the fact that if I'd say anything too wild, too controversial, I mean, I'm a civil rights lawyer, but I love making jokes about race.
Mm-hmm.
And so would this hurt my career? So it would never necessarily hurt my career as an attorney, but there were times as a comic where maybe I might have held back or I wouldn't post things
Okay.
I think were hilarious, but I don't know, that might be detrimental to my career if anyone Googled me.
So people watching this, if you want to see the real edgy, crazy butter shit, you can't just follow him. You got to watch him live. That's where
Yeah.
he's really gonna let loose and say the most wild thing you ever heard.
Well, I got my DOJ security background check all cleared, so I might just be edgy now and throw that out there because they can't. It's almost like being tenured. Like, yeah,
So
I
they watched that, right? I'm assuming.
I would hope so. I hope I had a good time with my background check.
Right. Yeah. Did you just get a bunch of random likes from DOJ man? I don't know. Some
FBI flowers by Irene or something.
yeah. Not a cop, not an FBI agent. I don't know, something. So but recently, if people are watching you on Instagram, you have all these, which are very good. I watched a bunch of them just before this. You have all these reels. You're doing something at this big stage. What was, that looked like it was a big performance. What was that?
Yeah, so this is comedian. Her name is Zarna Garg. So she's a pretty big comic in the comedy world. She's at the peak of becoming really big. So she's this Indian woman who's used to be a lawyer and then retired and does stand-up comedy full time. Her daughter goes to Stanford, and she's just been crushing it in the sense of selling out pretty big venues like like the Laugh Factory or something. And she'll go to Chicago and the West Coast, East Coast. And she had an hour special recently. She was with Hillary Clinton on that Apple show not too long ago. She was on NPR, so she's huge. And I got to know her because I made a short film that got into Chicago South Asian Film Festival. And I met one of the filmmakers there who's trying to be a comedian. He's now becoming pretty good. His name is Vikram, Hot Vic. And he introduced me to her. And then her and I chatted. And then she goes, hey, I'm coming to DC. Do you want to host and open for me? She saw some of my clips. And then I got to do that show. It was at the Arlington Draft House in the Washington, D.C. area.
That's awesome.
I think, yeah, thanks, man. It was like $250, I'd say, per show for 4 shows.
And how much time did you get to do?
I got to do, I would say 15, 20 minutes. I was an opener, but then you like introduce each act. And then I got to, and she was really generous. She said, if you want to take a few extra minutes to try some things, do it. I'm like, yes. So what I did was I wore the exact same outfit for all the shows. And then I hired someone to shoot it, like a legit person instead of someone with my phone.
Yeah.
And then make it look like it's one performance and made it like a mini special, like just 20 minute special called North Dakota Brown, because I'm from North Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it turned out that was kind of one of my checklist goals I wanted for this year, was to have a mini special, not an hour, because I don't know. I don't really think anybody wants to hear me talk for an hour at this point, except for here.
No, we're gonna make it through this, but yeah, I'm already. You're selling yourself short, all right, Butter. People would listen to you for 3 hours if they could.
Thanks, sir.
So, and people listening, if you don't know, like getting to do 15 or 20 minutes of comedy is not common. That's really cool. That's like a lot of time. It's great that you had that much material to go, because like, when's the last time you did a set that had more than 5 minutes before that?
It's hard. Yeah. I mean, I'm at a place now where, most of the sets I get are maybe, between 5 and 10 minutes. Every once in a while, maybe a 15-minute, but it's pretty unusual unless I'm like a feature. Yeah. And I'm at a place now where I'm happy if I can get 7 to 10 minutes, that's really enough for me at this point. It's nice to have 15, 20 minutes because you can really flesh out an idea, take your time, because when you have 5 minutes, you got to make it so tight. You got to get that laugh every 10 to 15 seconds. But
yeah,
when you
did any of your coworkers go to your thing?
Not cool. I told them about it. I don't think they went, but which is maybe
that's like the story. It's so typical, right? Like,
but a lot of people went. Like I had a condo I was renting out, and we sold it, but like the tenants came to that, like random people who I would never think. And a couple people might actually, a couple coworkers did come.
That's awesome.
To the show. Yeah. But it was a lot of my wife's friends. My wife is super outgoing, gregarious person. So she brought a bunch, and I'm pretty sure we had close to sell out or sold out pretty much for all those shows.
Gotcha. No,
but they weren't coming for me entirely. I would say Zarna probably got it.
Right, of course. And did she like give you any feedback or anything, or?
Yeah, she did. I kind of picked her brain, and she was super generous about it. I just said, Zarna, she said 2 things to me. One, I just looked at her after a long show, and she was like, are you sure you want to do this? Because there's so much work, she was saying, about, it's not just about the performing and the writing the jokes. She goes, that's the icing on the cake. It really is about promoting the show, selling the tickets, booking all this thing. It's a lot of logistical work. But the big advice that she gave me was, you have to build a social media following if you ever want to get to a certain level, because there's going to come a point where a booker is going to want to know, can you amass a crowd? Do you have a following? And so after I got her advice, I had a Instagram account that had, I think, 700 some followers, and now I got close to about 8,500. So it's growing, but I have much more to get to a legitimacy. I'm not as big as Jeff. For those of you who don't know, Jeff is crushing it on TikTok. He has well over 10,000 followers.
Yeah, well, I paid for a good amount of those. But that's impressive. I mean, how did you just blow up to 8,000 or whatever? Like, just by posting consistently? And
yeah, the key, a few things I learned is, because I did a fair amount of research. First of all, that special that you were mentioning, where I did for Zarna, where I had like whatever it was, 15, 20 minutes. We cut that into Instagram Reels, so every clip was 15 to 30 seconds. And I just kept posting those, and they were high quality, and they were, did reasonably well. So I would post those, use good hashtags, and I'd get my friends who have more followers than me, including you, to share them. And that really helped getting that traffic up.
Yeah.
And then I did a couple other videos. One of them got 1.5 million views, and that really helped. So I think just for me, in my experience, I found that if you just get a couple of those videos, I get like over 1 million or get, over 15, 20,000, whatever, that can really make a difference in the follower count. And if you keep posting consistently. So I just made it a thing where I try to post just twice a week even. I went to
as
Italy
you post, you're definitely increasing the chance that people at work are going to know about this or see it. Are you ever afraid of any of that, or do you care?
Not anymore. My boss is kind of funny. My boss and I had like these one-on-one chats. She like checks in with her coworkers, and we sometimes talk not just about work, but it's like, hey, how you doing? And she said, oh, can I follow you on Instagram? And I'm like, oh, because I'm funny. She's like, no, I just want to see your son. He's adorable. But I know my boss probably sees some of my stuff, but now at this point, I'm not as afraid now about that stuff not because my background check cleared, but I guess my style and my personality is not that controversial. Maybe I'm at a point where I crossed that stage. I'm a different generation where what I think is in that avant-garde, maybe. I don't know, but
yeah, well, you are 40, so you probably don't even know what's triggering people and what's not PC. Like you don't even.
Yeah, that's true.
You are you're a civil rights lawyer, but can we trust you to be woke and chill? I don't know. Like, do you have any fear of that?
That's I sometimes do that as my opening thing where I'll say I'm a civil rights lawyer. I'm woke for a living, but right now I'm off the clock. So let's get racist. and right off the bat, that usually eases some tension because that gives me a little bit of, okay, he can be a little offensive. He does this for a living, but
gotcha. But it sounds like, you have you're working on this balance. There's definitely a bit of don't quit your day job happening here. Where do you see yourself in 10 years if you're alive? Which we'll see, but like what's your goal? What do you think would be the best thing in 10 years for both professions?
Okay. Well, in 10 years, wow. Okay. For the federal government, I do want to stay in the federal government. Department of Justice, it's hard to think of another agency that tops for what I want to do. As a civil rights attorney, there really aren't any places higher than the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. I can't think of any in the federal government. I mean, I guess there's the White House General Counsel's office, but that's not really a civil rights only division. They do all kinds of things, and I don't know if that's really my cup of tea. So I'd want to stay in the Department of Justice, but I want to move up. I would love to be a deputy or maybe even a section chief someday. I don't know if 10 years, if that's doable, we'll see. But I want to move up for sure in the federal. So 10 years, yes, I would want that. In terms of being a comedian, right now my goals are the next couple of years, maybe just get passed at some major clubs and get booked consistently where it's paid. A lot of comics say I want to get passed, but it's not just about being passed. It's like, getting paid opportunities. And then from there, I don't know, man, like 10 years is a long time. I'm thinking more than the next few years. Like my dream as a comedian for the next 3-4 years would be getting past at clubs. And then whenever a big comedian like Hassan Minhaj or Bill Burr or whoever, Nikki Glaser or whatever, comes into town and they're like, Brother, would you open for me?
Yeah.
Like to have that kind of consistent opportunity and maybe a legit 20-30 minute special on Netflix or something. But I don't want to tour the country. I don't have that capacity. So
people can come to you. The country can come to you.
Exactly.
Which they will on your Instagram and DC. I mean, it's a building comedic spot. It's obviously there's New York and LA, but I've been hearing more and more things, more comedy clubs opening up there, and the federal government, it's probably building there too.
It is. I heard
it's growing. Depending, it's always good. Yeah, it's funny when got big government, more regulations, whatever, and people can feel however they want, but it's like the lawyers, bring it on, more stuff for us.
And even if you want to deregulate, you need lawyers for that too, right?
I guess so. But let's not use the D word.
Let's keep it clean.
Yeah, seriously. Well, this was awesome. I appreciate it. We're out of time because I don't have the Zoom premium, but so we're gonna cut off. But definitely appreciate you spending the time sharing your world with us. And some people out there are interested in lawyers talking to lawyers. So
Yeah, sick people.
yeah,
But
I hope they're also lawyers, or who knows. But this was great, and it was good seeing you, man.
good seeing you, man.
All right. Well, take it easy. Have a good night, and we'll catch you on Netflix soon.